Was Jesus a real person? Can we find reliable historical evidence that Jesus did in fact live in the flesh and walk the earth? This is a growing question, both among critics of the Bible and those who genuinely want to know. So in this video, we'll look at the work of 3 historians who all agree that Jesus was indeed a real person. Be sure to stick around to the end because you may have heard of the first 2, but the third could surprise you. And don't just believe us, but prove these things for yourself. Historian number 1, Flavius Josephus, aka Josephus. Josephus was born in 37 AD, just 6 years after the death of Jesus, and he lived to around 100 AD. He was born to a distinguished priestly family in Jerusalem and became a known priest, scholar, and historian of his time. In the latter years of his life, he devoted his efforts to literary pursuits. His major works include History of the Jewish War and Antiquities of the Jews. Antiquities of the Jews is believed to have been written in 93 AD, just 62 years after Jesus' death. It is within the pages of this work that Josephus made 2 references to Jesus. The first passage, found in Book 18, says, "Now there was about this time Jesus, a wise man, if it be lawful to call him a man, for he was a doer of wonderful works. A teacher of such men as received the truth with pleasure. He drew over to him both many of the Jews and many of the Gentiles. He was the Christ. And when Pilate, at the suggestion of the principal men among us, had condemned him to the cross, those that loved him at the first did not forsake him, for he appeared to them alive again the 3rd day, as the divine prophets had foretold these and 10,000 other wonderful things concerning him. And the tribe of Christians, so named from him, are not extinct at this day." Now, some scholars are concerned this passage has been tampered with over time. Later Christian additions or alterations may certainly have been made. In fact, Josephus probably did not believe Jesus to be the Christ, but this mention of him as a recognized figure is still significant. And Josephus does clearly mention Jesus a second time. In Book 20, he writes of the brother of Jesus, who was called Christ, whose name was James. This passage shows no evidence of tampering like the other, and clearly mentions Jesus Christ as a real person. So this Roman Jewish priest, scholar, and historian, well respected in his time, provides us with an early reference and a piece of historical evidence confirming the existence of Jesus. Historian number 2, Publius Cornelius Tacitus, aka Tacitus. Tacitus was a Roman orator, public official, and historian who lived from approximately 56 AD, just 25 years after the death of Jesus, to 120 AD. His best-known works are the Annals and Histories. The Annals, covering the time period of approximately 14 to 68 AD, include the time of Jesus' ministry and Emperor Nero's reign. It is there that we see one of the earliest historical accounts of Jesus. In Book 15, Tacitus recounts the Great Fire of Rome, which took place in 64 AD. At the time, many believed that Nero himself ordered the fire to be started. But in an attempt to shift blame, Nero accused a new religious movement for the destruction. Tacitus explains, "Consequently, to get rid of the report, Nero fastened the guilt and inflicted the most exquisite tortures on a class hated for their abominations called Christians by the populace. Christus, from whom the name had its origin, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of one of our procurators, Pontius Pilate. The Great Fire of Rome occurred just 33 years after the crucifixion of Jesus. These events were recorded not centuries, but years later. Many people who lived during Jesus' ministry were still alive at this time. So here we have another reliable piece of historical evidence affirming Jesus' existence." Now, while Josephus and Tacitus are 2 of the earliest historians to reference Jesus, they do not have the record for the earliest mention. That record belongs to our 3rd mystery historian. Historian number 3, Dr. Luke. It may be a surprise to you not that the Gospel of Luke exists, but that the account was written by someone considered an excellent historian. Luke was a doctor and apparently highly educated. The famous archaeologist and New Testament scholar William Mitchell Ramsey has said Luke is a historian of the first rank, and that he should be placed along with the very greatest of historians. And Luke tells us he was writing an historical account, inasmuch as many have taken in hand to set in order a narrative of those things which have been fulfilled among us, just as those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word delivered them to us, it seemed good to me also, having had perfect understanding of all things from the very first, to write to you an orderly account, most excellent Theophilus, that you may know the certainty of those things in which you were instructed. It appears that Theophilus commissioned Luke to write an historical account of the life of Jesus. Luke approached this in the same way an historian or biographer would today. He got as close to the source material as possible. He was able to interview eyewitnesses of Jesus' life and record firsthand the accounts attesting to the fact that Jesus was a real person. Luke prepared an orderly account of the historical record. This is why Luke's writings contain specific historical details unlike the other gospel accounts. For example, we find several very specific references to well-known rulers and high-ranking, credible people. He records specific time frames, and he mentions the age of Jesus Christ at key points in his life. Luke was sure to include a specific chronology and the names of people who would have shown up in the Roman government's documentation and history. His account provides an excellent and accurate historical record, and it appears Theophilus appreciated it so much that he commissioned a second volume, which we call the Book of Acts today. Some critics of the Bible would like to throw out Luke's account, along with the other historical accounts of Matthew, Mark, and John, which all affirm the historicity of Jesus. But not accepting these accounts would be the equivalent of rejecting the works of Josephus and Tacitus as well. While critics may not like the narrative of Luke's historical account, on the question of whether or not Jesus was a real person, it is in agreement with the historical secular record. So, was Jesus a real person? The Roman historian Josephus said yes. The Roman historian Tacitus said yes. The Christian historian Dr. Luke, who interviewed eyewitnesses, said yes. And these three are far from the only sources. The historical record is without question. Jesus the Christ was a real person. If you're interested to learn what Jesus taught, check out our whiteboard, Did Jesus Teach His Followers to Keep the Ten Commandments? And if you enjoyed this video, please like, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel for more videos on Bible topics. Thanks for watching.